Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Carla Tantillo-Philibert. I'm the founder of Mindful Practices and the co-founder of the SEL check-in platform Class Catalyst. I'm so excited to have with us today our resident trauma therapist and a best friend, the fabulous Lara Vian. Hello, Lara.
Hello, it's so nice to be here with you again.
Oh, I'm so glad you're with us. We are so excited to be launching this brand new partnership with you around telehealth for teachers. This is exciting work. This is work that's needed right now. And we have friends tuning in from across the country to hear, like, what is telehealth? Why do teachers need telehealth? Like, is it confidential? Is it different than an employee assistant program in a district? And so just kind of getting from you a quick sketch about this service and why it's so needed. Now, before we do that, we're going to start with a quick pop check. And so everyone, you know the drill. Many of you who are with us all the time. So you're going to push your chairs back. You're going to find your feet. You're going to roll your shoulders back and find a breath. Pausing for a moment, just checking in as we start. Most of us, a very busy week. Breathing in, just noticing, and breathing out. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed, identifying some objects that are familiar to you in your room or your space. Well done. And so, Lara, let's start off first. Is there a need for telehealth for teachers? Like, what is it and why does it belong in schools?
Yes. Well, I would say there's absolutely a need for it. Teachers today more than ever are, completely stretched, right? They're tired and they're stressed out and they're overwhelmed with the expectations of our world today, really, right? So on top of teaching in the classroom and having, all of the complicated and complex issues that happen in a classroom on a daily basis, the pandemic, which we're still very much in, and yet our systems, right, are operating and trying to operate more as normal or as pre-pandemic. And time is short, right? And on top of that, teachers have lives. So, I think we often forget that teachers go home from school and, have lives. So I think we're just kind of collectively depleted right now, and I say collective just to give some context, kind of as a whole, right? Whole of educators right now are pretty depleted, and telehealth can offer a really unique opportunity where you don't have to commute. So there's that. We have become a little bit more savvy with virtual platforms now, right? So the reality of this moment is that the time it would take to get to a session, right, to an individual session or to have those services is often more time than we have available. You had some other questions, but I think I just got excited. So
no, this is perfect. So a lot of our schools had infrastructure in place prior to the pandemic for student mental health needs. And, there are some gaps there and we can talk about where those gaps are, but that's another session with you. Looking at the adult side, many schools had really no services in place for adult mental health needs. And so what ended up happening is kind of informally, social workers, school social workers, and school counselors would also be speaking to adults in the buildings. And so we have a person that's already spread very thin with crisis intervention for students, then also wanting to help colleagues, but not having the bandwidth. And so it sounds like telehealth can really be a solution for that, because many of our school districts just don't have infrastructure in place for adult mental health needs.
Right. I think that's a really good point. When I was director of counseling for a high school, my days were split between students, and I would often have a line of students out the door, and then I would have teachers in my office, right, kind of having some pretty intense experiences and needing to process that. And it was hard. I mean, I felt pulled, and so to be able to have an infrastructure in place is really important, particularly now, because sometimes asking folks what they need is draining right now, right? Because the reality is that many of us in schools don't know what we need when we need it, right? We just know we're feeling overwhelmed, our nervous systems are not regulated, we need help, and And so when the people who in the past have been our go-tos are also in that space, which I think school social workers are, it's nice to be able to have an objective, private, completely, separate space, right? That is someone who's holding space without knowing who you are, in the sense of knowing that you teach in room 127, and you must be, getting some sort of mental health support during this hour. Knowing that you're struggling. A lot of folks feel pretty vulnerable about admitting that they're having challenges, whether it's in their personal life or whether it's in their school life, and feel that that would negatively impact their standing in their school or with their union or with their administrators. And so telehealth could provide, like, it's really a safe place to land.
I know a lot of school districts, especially larger school districts, have adopted like employee assistant programs. However, ultimately, to your point, what ends up happening is there is a stigma in education and in many professions around needing mental health help, seeking mental health assistance. And so teachers and school staff and personnel are reluctant to seek that help out. Whereas in this and with our service, because we're an outside provider, then it would be 100% confidential. We bill schools according, they buy buckets of hours, and they need more hours. We let them know, they buy another bucket. The platform is HIPAA compliant. And so, Lara, do you think that more teachers will seek out mental health services if they know that it's confidential and that their bosses and principals will never, find out that they needed it? I hate that there's this stigma, and hopefully in 10 years, this conversation will be different. But do you think that more folks will seek out that assistance if they know it's confidential?
I'm certainly hopeful that that is the case. I mean, there are programs all over, the country that are starting with, with these very confidential, private, free, right, to the participant services. There's one even in mental health called the emotional PPE program, right, and it was designed to create this private, confidential space, free of charge, so there's no trail, right? And a lot of folks do still have, with kind of the changing insurance, laws, like they do have some hesitance sometimes to use their insurance, to get therapy, or even don't even know how to find, someone who could help support their mental health, because looking at a website of clinicians is overwhelming. So this is really designed to kind of be a solutions focused service, where it's not probably like an ongoing relationship, unless that's something that a school wants to kind of contract with. But it's more about where folks can come, they can have a safe, confidential place to land, to talk about some of the things that are happening, and then have an objective person who's not in it with them to identify solutions and to kind of create an individual plan moving forward.
Beautiful. And thank you, Larry, because that was my next question. Like, what does telehealth for teachers look like? And so schools buy buckets of hours, and those hours include workshops. And so it sounds like if I was going to sign up with you, I would have my hour-long session, and then you would, as part of the program, you would have me choose like A, B, or C workshop to attend based upon what you view my needs are. Is that correct?
I would envision that folks would have, right, like access to more information that would help us based on what was presented in the session. Right. And then, of course, options for follow-up if that's something that, I see kind of a broad program. And then if some schools have some specific ways that they want to individualize that, I could see that happening as well.
I love that. And so, Lara, tell me, when you think about this service really helping teachers and helping school staff, knowing that they're under large amount of stress, administrators are under large amounts of stress. What is your vision for telehealth for teachers? When it's working, what are you seeing in schools?
When it's working, I'm seeing educators who feel more supported, who have some tools that they can pull out of their toolbox, or tool belt, whichever, that are successful and varied. So this idea, I think sometimes I talk a lot to educators who are like, my tools that I have learned in the last, few years are not working right now.
Right.
And so being able to know that, that there are others that we can continue trying and practicing. I see kind of a path, right? I see folks who feel like they have a path towards feeling better. Ideally, we'll have teachers who want to stay. I mean, I think that's a pretty big part of it, that, when we're overwhelmed and feeling depleted, we're activating our fight or flight. And so a lot of folks are probably feeling defensive and also wanting to flee. And so I think that telehealth could certainly help people rediscover like why they're there. So this individual self-care is part of the puzzle, right? I mean, it coexists with the larger, need for more systemic change. But I want to validate, because I think a lot of educators feel like, oh, well, I'm being asked to just calm down, right? When these are really valid reasons, I'm not calm. And absolutely, like, so this is not a concrete situation. This is a both and.
Thank you for saying that, Lara. Forgive me. I'm taking notes as I always do. And I love how you're saying, like, hey, the message we don't want to send to educators and to school staff and personnel is like, yeah, just calm down, right? And minimize or invalidate their experiences. And so I know we have some more friends joining us. For those of you that are just with us, we're with Lara Vian talking about the new Mindful Practices new Telehealth for Teachers initiative. The Telehealth for Teachers initiative is a wonderful service that we're providing to schools, where school staff and personnel receive a telehealth session or two, and then workshop opportunities and opportunities to continue their growth in their practices. And then also, Lara, to your point, talk candidly and openly about the systemic change that's needed in education. And I think that's really important. I love, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to think that it's just like a venting session,
right,
about the microcosm of their particular school, even though those looking and examining our own situations is of course very relevant in our own context, but also talking about education at large and what needs to change.
Mm-hmm. There's so much going on, so many complicated layers that are happening in our lives, that it's almost impossible to muster up the energy to go meta, right? Or larger systemic, focuses. And so this is really an opportunity for teachers to be able to say, I'm going to safely and confidentially have a space to land. I'm going to be held in my experience. I'm going to be believed in my experience, right? And then I'm going to have a plan so I can work towards having a little bit more capacity. And when I say capacity, I mean ability to hold the stress and the discomfort and let in a little bit of joy as well, right? Because sometimes we forget that, that exists as well. Some of that energy and positivity that really, I think, was why teachers came into the field to begin with.
And so, Lara, as we begin to wrap up, what I'm hearing you say, and I know this is on the minds of so many administrators that are tuning in with us today or watching the recording, is that, they're worried about teacher attrition. They're worried about being able to retain the staff they have. And so do you think that by providing services like this, administrators will be able to keep teachers in their schools serving kids?
I mean, that's certainly my hope. I mean, and I do think that it shows that administrators and districts care about their teachers, right? To be able to provide services for them, whether it's this one or, just being responsive and acknowledging, I can't do it all, right? Administrators can't do it all. They can't be emotional support and mental health support and tell a teacher, that these are the expectations of the school system, right? That's not a fair position. Teachers don't want somebody in those dual roles, right? Kind of supporting them in the way that they need. And so this is a way to say, okay, we're going to center your well-being We're going to center your need, and without, proposing a bunch of ways to fix it, right? I mean, that's kind of, because teachers also don't, and humans don't need, adults don't need somebody coming in and saying, this is the way to fix it. They need somebody who can kind of hold space and walk beside them as they navigate, because really we have answers and we have glimmers of wisdom, and we have a lot as educators and adults. And so this is really just a co-facilitated space where the wisdom that's inside of us, right, can kind of come out. And so as a service provider, I would never say this is what you need to do, but it's more about working with the innate wisdom that we all have, but that just gets a little dampened down when we're overwhelmed.
Lara, so well said, as always, as always. And so, friends, again, thank you for joining us. This has been a quick glimpse into telehealth with teachers with the fabulous Lara Vian. Again, telehealth with teachers is a service Mindful Practice is providing, where schools, personnel, and staff receive a session or two with a licensed clinician, and then receive workshop opportunities. Again, Lara, I love this idea of folks deepening a practice, of a clinician walking beside this adult or this school stakeholder. And so, Lara, in closing, what is your advice for school administrators who've been with us today, or school folks who've been with us today who are thinking, oh my gosh, I love this idea. How do I sell this to my school board? How do I get this funded in my school district, when usually most of the resources are going to, services for students?
I think that it's important. I mean, the attrition piece is very, is very useful to focus on, when we're talking, because our school boards and our parents and, want our children to have good, healthy teachers, right? We know that healthy, functional teachers who feel safe help students feel healthy, functional, and safe, right? And that they help them learn. And so I would highly recommend the service simply for saying, this is a way that we can support our teachers. This is a way that we don't have to deplete ourselves by supporting our teachers, right? So we all know that we have to take things away in order to add things. And yet that hasn't happened in the last, few years. And so this is a way to kind of offset some of that time and space and emotional energy that I don't really think administrators or even school boards have right now, because they're so depleted. So I would stress that this is an opportunity to provide without it depleting the larger system.
Thank you so much, Lara. Thank you for your time. And as always, your wisdom and guidance. It's just so beneficial.
Happy to be here.
So excited to be launching this initiative with you and sharing this with school districts across the country.
Yeah.
If you are with us, friends, and you're watching this recording, please feel free to reach out to me and to Lara. I'll give you my email address. It's Carla with a C, CARLA.P@mindfulpractices.us. That's carla.p@mindfulpractices.us. You can reach out to me, to Lara. We'll schedule a time to book these services with your district and get started helping teachers and staff.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, friends. Enjoy the rest of your day.